Erin Callahan hadn't planned to take the back roads. It was late afternoon, and the sun was beginning its slow slide behind the ridges that framed Maple Hollow, Virginia. The air had that crisp bite of early October, cool enough for a hoodie, warm enough to make her feel like pedaling a little farther. She'd taken this route before, once, maybe twice. Devil's Curve was a winding sliver of asphalt that cut through the edge of town like a forgotten scar. Locals warned about it: bad pavement, blind turns, no cell service, but Erin liked the quiet. No traffic. No billboards. Just trees shedding leaves like memories, rustling softly as she rode. She was halfway down the curve when the chain snapped. 1 minute she was coasting smoothly. The next, her pedals spun free with a hollow clank. The back wheel locked up. She swerved, hit the brakes, and stumbled off the seat, heart racing. Her foot landed awkwardly in a patch of gravel, and she winced as she caught herself. "Great," she muttered, steadying the bike with one hand. "Real great." The road stretched behind her in both directions, empty and quiet. Not a house in sight. No passing cars. Just the sound of the wind whispering through sycamore branches overhead. Her phone had 1 bar, maybe less, and wouldn't load a map, much less a call. She knelt beside the bike, tried to rethread the chain, and smeared her fingers with black grease. It was no use. The derailleur was bent. She'd need a wrench, maybe even a new part. Then she heard it. The shuffle of boots on pavement. Slow. Measured. She turned. An old man stood about 15 feet away, as if he'd been there the whole time. He wore a navy workshirt with rolled-up sleeves, a faded oil patch stitched over the chest that read, "Ray." His overalls were smudged with grime, like he'd just walked out of an auto shop. His hair was silver, cut short, and his face was weathered but calm, almost kind. "You all right?" he asked. Voice low. Gentle. Like he already knew the answer. Erin blinked. "Yeah, no. My chain broke. I'm kind of stuck." He nodded, then walked toward her slowly, crouching by the bike like he'd done this 100 times. Maybe 1,000. He pulled a rag from his back pocket and ran a practiced hand over the chain, checking tension, muttering something under his breath about cheap aluminum brackets and modern garbage. "Mind if I?" he asked, already pulling a small tool from his pocket. Erin stepped back, watching as he adjusted the rear cog, nudged the derailleur into place, and slipped the chain back on with a kind of quiet efficiency. It was like watching someone rewind a clock they built themselves. No wasted movements. No doubt. Just work. She stood awkwardly with her arms crossed. "Thank you. Seriously. I didn't think anyone would be out here." "Not many are," he said, tightening one last bolt. "Not anymore." He stood, wiping his hands on the rag, and gave her a once-over. Not suspicious, just thoughtful. "Don't go back the way you came," he said simply. Erin frowned. "Why not?" But he didn't answer. Just gave a small nod, turned on his heel, and walked off toward the tree line across the road. She bent to grab her water bottle, thinking to offer him something for the trouble. When she looked back up, he was gone. No footsteps. No rustling leaves. No sign of a vehicle. The road was still. The woods were silent. And Erin was completely alone. By the time Erin coasted back into town, the sun had fully dipped below the trees, and Maple Hollow was bathed in that soft, amber twilight that always made it feel like a painting. She didn't go straight home. Instead, she found herself drifting into Miller's General, a cramped little convenience store near the edge of town that sold everything from canned peaches to car batteries. The kind of place where you could still get a cold RC cola for $1 and someone always knew someone's business. The bell above the door jingled as she stepped inside. Rita Miller, the owner, looked up from behind the counter, half reading a paperback and half watching the TV mounted in the corner. "Well, if it isn't Erin Callahan," Rita said with a warm drawl, eyeing her smudged hands. "You look like you wrestled a lawnmower." Erin let out a breath. "Bike chain snapped out by Devil's Curve. I thought I was gonna have to walk the whole way back, but some guy fixed it." Rita raised an eyebrow. "What guy?" I don't know, older, maybe 60s? Grease-stained overalls. Said his name was, well, I think it was Ray. It was on his patch. He just appeared, fixed it, and disappeared. Like, poof. No car, no bike, nothing. Rita didn't smile. Instead, her face slowly paled. She stepped around the counter without saying a word and went to the wall behind her, where a corkboard was cluttered with faded flyers, fishing schedules, and old obituaries. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pulled out a thumbtack and took down a yellowed newspaper clipping, folded in half. Ray Hanley, she said, handing it to Erin. He owned Hanley's garage off Oak Street. Died 10 years ago this October. Hit and run out on. She stopped herself. Out on Devil's Curve. Erin stared down at the clipping. A black and white photo showed a man smiling beside an old Harley. Grease on his coveralls. Patch on his chest. Ray. Her heart thudded in her chest, slow and heavy. This is him, Erin said quietly. This is the guy who helped me. Rita crossed her arms. He's been dead a decade, Erin. There was a long silence. The only sound was the hum of the old soda fridge and the faint static of the Weather Channel muttering about an incoming cold front. Erin glanced toward the door like she expected to see him there again. Hands in his pockets, smile under the brim of a trucker hat. But I talked to him, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He told me not to go back the way I came. Rita's expression shifted, not fear, exactly. Something closer to recognition. Like a wound being pressed after too many years. He used to say that, she said. Back when the garage was still open. Said that road never liked to let things go. Erin barely slept that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of her apartment over the coffee shop she managed, the sound of the radiator knocking like a heartbeat she couldn't slow down. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the man's face, Ray's face, clearer than she ever should have. His voice echoed too. Don't go back the way you came. It hadn't sounded like a warning at the time. More like a passing suggestion. But now, lying in the dark with her bike leaning in the corner and grease still under her nails, it gnawed at her. By morning, she needed answers. The sun rose silver and cold. Erin, dressed in jeans, boots and a fleece jacket, shoved a granola bar into her pocket and rolled her bike out onto the sidewalk. She didn't even bother unlocking the shop. She was going back to Devil's Curve. The road was just as quiet as before. Quieter, even. The wind had picked up, stirring dry leaves across the asphalt like they were trying to scurry away from something. She kept pedaling, slower this time, her breath fogging in the morning air. The deeper she rode, the more the atmosphere seemed to change. The sun disappeared behind clouds. The trees pressed closer together. Her tires cracked over broken pavement and half-covered potholes. No cars passed her. No joggers. No kids. It felt like the whole stretch had been peeled off from the rest of the world. She didn't know what she was looking for exactly. A shed? A trailer? Maybe she'd find Ray again. Maybe he wasn't really dead. Maybe Rita was just confused. Maybe. The thought died in her throat. She was back at the spot. She recognized the crooked sycamore, the dip in the road, the same patch of gravel where she'd stumbled yesterday. And then, a sudden blare of a horn. Erin's head snapped around. Too fast. A pickup truck rounded the bend out of nowhere, tires screeching, and came barreling toward her. For a split second, she couldn't move. Her brain just stopped. All she could see were headlights and rust-red paint and the driver's arm slamming on the wheel. Then something yanked her bike sideways, like a gust of wind or a hand grabbing her by the collar. The truck missed her by inches, tearing past with a roar, never slowing. No plates. No apology. She hit the ground hard. Her hand scraped the pavement, and her elbow throbbed where it slammed into her ribs. But she was alive. Shaking. Breathing. And then she noticed something else. The same rag. Folded neatly on the side of the road. The one Ray had used to wipe his hands. She stared at it like it was a puzzle piece left behind on purpose. Erin sat there for a long while, listening to her heart pound, the wind blow, and the woods rustle like they were whispering things she couldn't quite catch. And one thought wouldn't leave her alone. Ray hadn't just saved her. He'd warned her. It started with an obituary. Erin went back to Miller's General the next morning, fingers still sore from her fall, and asked Rita if she had any old town papers. The older woman didn't ask questions, just nodded and led her to a dusty plastic bin in the back office, filled with folded editions of the Maple Hollow Gazette. "Knock yourself out," Rita said. "People only ever look through these when someone dies, or something doesn't sit right." Erin sat cross-legged on the floor for hours, flipping through yellowed pages. The obituary itself was short and plain. Raymond Joseph Hanley, 63, local mechanic and owner of Hanley's Garage, died in a hit-and-run on Route 14, near Devil's Curve, October 18, 2015. Survived by daughter, Lacey Hanley. There was no follow-up article. No arrest. No suspect. But something about that name, Lacey, stuck in Erin's mind. She hadn't seen it in any of the shop talk around town. No family photos in the garage when she'd driven past it as a kid. No Facebook profile. It was like the daughter had vanished. So Erin started asking around. At first, the town met her questions with polite confusion. A few folks remembered Ray, nice guy, fair prices, always had a peppermint in his pocket. But Lacey? Half the people swore he never had kids. Then she talked to an old customer of Ray's, a retired postal worker named Marge Connolly, who used to bring her moped in every spring. "Oh, he had a daughter all right," Marge said, leaning over her porch rail. "Sharp girl. Ran off right after he died. Real sudden. Some folks said she just couldn't take it. But others..." She looked around, lowered her voice. "Others said she was scared." "Of what?" Erin asked. Marge shrugged. "Of what he found." Erin blinked. "Found. That's what I heard. Ray was out late that night. Not fixing a car, just out walking. Some say he was headed to the police. He'd picked something up off the road. Something that didn't belong." That was the end of the trail for Marge. She didn't know what it was, or whether the cops had followed up. But the idea planted itself deep in Erin's gut like a nail. Ray had found something. Ray had told someone. And within 24 hours, Ray had been dead, and his daughter, gone. Erin stopped by the garage later that day. It was boarded up and overgrown now, wild vines crawling over the faded red siding. Someone had spray-painted a crooked X on the side, and an old inspection sticker flapped loose from the door. She pressed her hand against the glass and whispered, "What were you trying to show me, Ray?" A bird flew out from the rafters above, startling her back a step. Somewhere inside that empty building, and somewhere deeper in this town's memory, there was a secret Ray never got to share. But maybe, he still wanted someone to find it. A week passed, but Erin couldn't let it go. Not the ghost. Not the truck that nearly killed her. Not the daughter who vanished without a trace. She found herself zoning out during work shifts, burning toast, forgetting orders. Even her co-workers noticed, especially Maya, her best friend since high school, who finally pulled her aside in the stockroom. "You look like you've been sleepwalking through a ghost story," Maya said. "What's going on?" Erin told her everything. The bike. The man. The warning. The near miss. The clipping. Ray's daughter. All of it. She half expected Maya to laugh, or worse, worry about her mental health. But instead, Maya said, "I think I know someone who can help." That weekend, they drove to the outskirts of Maple Hollow, to a small ranch-style house with solar panels and 5 different wind chimes tinkling in the breeze. It belonged to Ed Pritchard, a retired software engineer and local oddball known for one thing, his obsession with traffic cams. Ed didn't trust the state DOT, so he'd set up his own monitoring system to keep watch over his stretch of road, including Devil's Curve. It was a weird hobby, but the footage was clear, time-stamped, archived, and weirdly well organized. I've got Devil's Curve facing north and south. You want dusk or daytime? Ed asked, already pulling up a window on his desktop. 3 Thursdays ago, Erin said. Around 5 p.m. It took less than 5 minutes. The camera showed an overgrown shoulder, flickering trees, a stretch of empty road. Then, just past the timestamp of Erin's chain snapping, a figure stepped into the edge of the frame, blurry but real. It was a woman, mid-30s maybe. Slight build. Wearing a bright red windbreaker. Erin's breath caught. She remembered Ray's obituary. The daughter would be around 37 now. And this woman, blurry as she was, walked with that same kind of purpose Ray had shown. Not hurried, but certain. Like someone who'd grown used to keeping to the shadows. She didn't look at the camera. She didn't even seem startled when the truck, the same rust-red pickup, passed by, just seconds later. What the hell? Erin muttered. Maya leaned in. You think that's Lacey? Erin nodded slowly. I think she's watching Devil's Curve. Why? I think she's waiting for someone to figure it out. Ed clicked pause. Whoever she is, she knew that camera was there. That's the edge of the blind spot. She walked it like muscle memory. Erin stared at the screen. She had started this just trying to understand one strange encounter. But now the mystery had weight, a pulse. Lacey wasn't just missing. She might be alive. She might be hiding. And she might be watching. And if that was true, why hadn't she come forward? Erin had never been the kind of person to hang around the sheriff's station. But that Monday morning, she was there before the coffee had finished brewing, her palms sweating as she waited in the small, echoey lobby. A young deputy passed through, dark jeans under his uniform, wide shoulders, a small notepad in his back pocket. He glanced at her once, did a double-take, and walked over. You're Erin Callahan, right? She nodded, surprised. I'm Deputy Kyle Mercer. You came by about Ray Hanley. That caught her even more off guard. How'd you know? I'm the one who logged the file, he said. A decade ago. I was fresh out of training. It never sat right with me. He led her into a back office. No one else seemed to care. Maple Hollow's police department had a reputation. Polite, small town, understaffed, and deeply uninterested in stirring things up. Kyle closed the door and sat down, folding his hands. What I'm about to tell you isn't official, he said. It's not in the report. But you're not the first person to see him. Erin's skin prickled. What do you mean? There've been sightings, Kyle said. Over the years. People broken down near Devil's Curve, then swearing up and down that some old man fixed their car or pushed them to safety. Some described the overalls. The rag. One guy said he saw Ray standing on the yellow line, just staring, like he was waiting for something. Why didn't you tell anyone? She asked. Kyle gave a tired smile. Because Maple Hollow doesn't forget, but it sure knows how to bury. Ray was liked, but when he died, things got quiet. Too quiet. No one investigated where he was walking to. No one asked what he was doing out so late. Everyone just folded it into tragedy and moved on. But his daughter disappeared, Erin said. That's not just a tragedy. That's a pattern. Kyle nodded slowly, then leaned forward, lowering his voice. You said Ray told you not to go back the way you came, right? Erin blinked. Yeah. He paused. There was one other person, back in 2019. Teenager on a dirt bike. Swore someone waved him off before he reached the bend. Said the guy vanished after that. Erin felt a chill crawl up her spine. Kyle continued, the thing is, there was a call made that night. Ray tried to phone the station. From a landline. But the call cut off. Dispatcher said he sounded panicked. Mentioned something in the woods. That part never made it into the file. Why not? Erin asked. Kyle looked down at his hands. Because the mayor told us to leave it alone. Said the family deserved peace. Said Ray must have been confused. Hallucinating. I didn't believe it then. I sure as hell don't believe it now. Erin thought of the map she'd seen in Ray's garage. The rag left behind like a marker. The woman in the red windbreaker walking right at the edge of visibility. What if he's not stuck? She whispered. What if he's trying to finish something? Kyle didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Then maybe you're part of it now." The garage stood like a mausoleum. It had once been alive, Ray's garage, a staple of Maple Hollow. But now it was quiet, forgotten, flaking red paint and rusted signage. The windows were clouded with years of dust and pollen. A half-fallen, closed sign still dangled in the window. Erin had driven past it 1,000 times growing up. She remembered her mom getting a flat fixed here once, Ray handing her a lollipop after. Back then, the place had smelled like oil and oranges. Now it just smelled like rain-soaked wood and thyme. She used a spare key Rita had borrowed back when the shop was first boarded up. Just in case someone ever came back, Rita had said with a knowing shrug. Inside, it was dim. Shafts of late afternoon light filtered through broken blinds. Cobwebs drifted between tool cabinets. The air was thick with dust, and something else, something heavy, like unfinished business. She moved carefully, checking the benches. The walls were lined with old pegboards and tools, some still hanging like they were waiting to be used again. But one workbench had a drawer that didn't open easily. She yanked it. It resisted, then gave way with a clunk. Inside was a beat-up metal toolbox, its latch bent but still intact. She lifted it out, placed it on the counter, and flipped the lid. A map. A photograph. And a receipt dated the day before Ray died. The map was hand-drawn, rough, creased, and stained with something that looked like coffee or blood. The top corner was labeled simply, DC, Devil's Curve. A red X was drawn just off the main road, into the woods. Beneath it, taped to the lid, was a photo. Slightly warped with age, but clear. It was Ray's daughter, Lacey, smiling, wind in her hair, standing beside a man in a navy suit. A man Erin recognized instantly, Mayor Randall Price. Her uncle by marriage. Her chest tightened. She hadn't thought of Randall in years. Her aunt's second husband, always charismatic at parties, always full of handshakes and campaign slogans. She hadn't known he even knew Ray. But here he was, standing shoulder to shoulder with a girl who was supposed to be missing. A girl who'd vanished after her father's death. A girl who had now possibly been spotted back on Devil's Curve. Why hadn't anyone ever said anything? Why hadn't Randall? Erin took a photo of the picture. She folded the map and slid it into her jacket pocket. She didn't take the toolbox, something about it felt like it should stay. As she stepped back into the dying daylight, she looked up and saw the faint reflection of herself in the garage window. For a second, just a second, she thought she saw someone standing behind her. Overalls. A smudge of grease across the cheek. But when she turned, she was alone. Ray's garage had given her what it could. Now it was time to ask why the mayor had tried to bury it. Erin didn't call ahead. She showed up at Mayor Randall Price's front door just before dusk, winded from biking all the way up the hill to his manicured property. The house looked like a postcard, white porch swing, American flag, hydrangeas blooming in a perfect arc around the walkway. Too perfect. Randall opened the door in a golf shirt and khakis, his campaign smile already halfway formed, until he saw who it was. "Erin," he said slowly. "Well, this is a surprise. We need to talk," she said. "About Ray Hanley. And Lacey." That name wiped the smile clean off his face. Inside, they sat in the living room, leather chairs, a marble fireplace, and a mounted photo of Randall shaking hands with a senator. Erin didn't bother softening her voice. "I found a photo of you and Lacey. In Ray's garage. From the day before he died." Randall exhaled. Not surprised. Just tired. "You've been digging," he said. "Because no one else would." He stood and walked to the window, watching the sunset through blinds. Lacey wasn't missing, he said. She was hiding. Erin's stomach turned. From what? Randall turned back toward her. From who? He told her everything. Lacey had uncovered documents connecting a local developer, Branham and Hearst Associates, to illegal waste dumping on protected state land just beyond Devil's Curve. The land was meant to stay clean, untouched, but they'd been siphoning campaign money into hush agreements, permits, backdoor deals. She was sharp, Randall said. Too sharp. She tried to report it, and they came after her. Threats, intimidation. Her car was tampered with. She knew she couldn't go to the cops. Not when Branham and Hearst were major donors, to me. Erin felt something icy slip down her spine. So you buried it. Randall didn't deny it. She came to me scared. I told her to disappear. Ray was furious. Said he was going to the police himself. That night, he left the garage. He never came back. You think they killed him? Randall looked her in the eye. I know they did. Erin's voice trembled with restrained fury. And you let them. I tried to protect what I could, he said, quieter now. I had Lacey stashed with friends out west for years. It wasn't supposed to last this long. But she came back recently. Said she had evidence. She wanted to finish what her father started. Erin stood. She's not just trying to finish it. Ray is, too. Randall looked up at her, something flickering in his expression. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. She's walking the edge of Devil's Curve again, Erin said. And Ray's still there. Pushing people out of danger. Showing them where to look. Randall didn't respond. But he didn't deny it, either. As Erin stepped back out into the night, the town below glowed faintly, safe, silent, unaware. She looked out toward the road winding off into the woods. Ray had tried to warn her. Now she knew why. And somewhere out there, his daughter was waiting, still trying to bring the truth into daylight. The air was heavy when Erin pedaled back to Devil's Curve. It was past midnight. The trees leaned in like eavesdroppers, the moon barely strong enough to light the road. She stopped at the edge of the woods where the X had been marked on Ray's map. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded it again, the paper now soft from use. The red X was off the shoulder, just behind a stand of tall pine and a tangle of rusted wire fencing. She clicked on her headlamp and stepped into the dark. The woods smelled like earth and old rain. Pine needles crunched beneath her boots. Every branch creak sounded like a breath. But Erin pushed forward, counting steps against the landmarks on Ray's drawing. The bent oak, the hollow stump, the streambed. Then, just where he'd marked it, she found the clearing. Half sunken in dirt, covered by a camouflaged tarp and weighed down with rocks, was a weatherproof storage container. She dropped to her knees and yanked the lid open. Inside, a folder packed with documents, receipts, blueprints, transaction records stamped with Branham and Hearst's letterhead. Photos of trucks, dumping barrels behind chain-link fences. A USB drive taped to a hand-labeled envelope, Lacey, copy. And at the very bottom, a worn denim patch. The same patch Ray wore on his coveralls. His name stitched in red thread. He'd hidden it all here. Not to bury it, but to protect it. And he'd been trying to get it into someone's hands for 10 years. Erin sat back on her heels, heart pounding. It wasn't just evidence, it was everything. The motive, the cover-up, the reason he'd been silenced. Lacey had been right to hide. And Ray had died trying to give this to the authorities. She understood now what the warning had meant. Don't go back the way you came. Because that road had been watched. Patrolled. The cover-up wasn't just political. It was dangerous. Ray had diverted her. Protected her. Guided her to this very spot. A twig snapped behind her. Erin froze. But instead of fear, she felt something else. A strange warmth on the back of her neck. Not heat. Presence. She turned. Nothing there. No flashlight, no movement, no person. But the wind picked up, and with it came a whisper so soft, so clear, it felt like breath brushing past her ear. "You take care now." She swallowed hard, heart pounding in the stillness. Then zipped the folder shut, stuffed the envelope into her jacket, and turned back toward the road. It was time to finish what Ray and Lacey had started. 3 weeks later, Maple Hollow was no longer quiet. The front page of the Hollow Gazette ran the headline, "Mayor implicated in decade-old cover-up, whistleblower re-emerges." The evidence Erin turned over had lit a match under the whole damn town. Branham and Hearst's illegal dumping ring was exposed. Several officials resigned. Randall Price stepped back from public life the next day. And Lacey? She stepped forward. The day Erin met her wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, early morning at the local diner, just after sunrise. Rita had called ahead and booked the corner booth. When Erin walked in, she saw a woman with tired eyes and a red windbreaker. The same one from the footage. From the stories. Lacey looked like someone who had survived a war and still wasn't sure if she'd won. "I figured it was time," she said softly, stirring her coffee. "He didn't fix your bike for nothing." They talked for hours. About Ray, who had hidden everything not to escape, but to protect. About the night he died, and how he'd told Lacey he was going to the sheriff with the documents. About the text he sent her right before he left, "Meet me at the garage in an hour." She got there 20 minutes late. And he was already gone. The town gave Ray Hanley a public memorial 2 days later. Not just a headstone in the graveyard, but a full ceremony at the community center. Photos lined the walls. Erin gave a short speech. Lacey didn't speak. She stood in the back, silent, eyes glassy. But she was there. So was Kyle Mercer, who'd since been promoted to interim sheriff. So was Rita, who wore a pin with Ray's name on it. So were dozens of neighbors, people Ray had fixed bikes or cars for over the years, people who hadn't realized what he'd done for them until it was too late. Now, they remembered. The road leading out of Maple Hollow, Devil's Curve, got repaved the next week. New guardrails. Fresh asphalt. Someone even posted a new sign warning drivers to slow down at the bend. Erin rode out there one last time. The sun was setting, casting gold across the trees. The air smelled like summer now, not death. She stood at the edge of the woods where the map had led her. No more fear in her gut, just calm. She got back on her bike. And as she pushed off, tires crunching gravel, the wind shifted behind her. It swirled just enough to make her glance over her shoulder. A whisper rose in the breeze, not loud, not clear, but familiar. "You take care now." She stopped. Looked around. No one. But the road, once cracked and dangerous, was smooth now, almost inviting. She smiled. And kept riding.